Hi, I'm Lizabeth,
And
and we're here with another feeding frenzy for the 4 Spiritual Laws of Prosperity by Edwin Gaines, a simple guide to unlimited abundance. We are on day 12 of chapter 8. In caring for ourselves and living in integrity. And it's about letting go. There you go. Got that. Hey, I had that one down pat. What about that?
You did. So, are you good at letting things go or not?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Depends on my emotional entanglement.
Okay. What does
Well,
that mean?
obviously, it's easier for me to clean up my Facebook account than it is to say goodbye to an old friend. Obviously.
Okay. Right.
By that I mean someone that I see often, have a fairly regular dealing or connection to. It just depends on my emotional entanglement to it.
I find that it's easy to let go. The hard part is realizing it's time to let it go.
True. True.
It took me a long time to realize that once I make a commitment, it's okay to let that go at some point. That making a commitment doesn't necessarily mean it's forever. And then I find that it's hard sometimes to realize that, that's past due to let go, And I think that every time things are not happening the way I want them to happen, that I should start asking those questions. Is it time to let this go? I know with clients, I've had to ask that question a lot. Is it time to let this client go? Sometimes, I have to ask myself, what am I losing by letting this go? And a lot of times I'm losing a lot of headaches and a lot of frustration.
Well, the opposite could be true. What am I gaining
by
letting this
go?
Right.
That's another good question. Sometimes I get it in my head that I've got to hang on to this, when I really don't. And that I would be relieving myself of a lot of heartache and headache if I just let it go.
That was a hard question for me to answer when it came to changing jobs. It took me a while to be able to let go.
Right.
It really did. And I had to let go in stages.
Right.
It wasn't something I could just back away from and say, I'm through. I had to let it go in increments.
Right.
Even though the final let go was abrupt, it took me a while to get there.
It wasn't abrupt here. It was abrupt in the
the
other
actual
people may
doing,
have seen it that way because they didn't know your thought process.
Right. But it took me over a year's worth of thought process and preparation before I could actually let it go. Right. It wasn't I went in one day and said, well, I quit.
Right.
I had to let it go in increments. And I think when I was talking about the emotional entanglement, I think the more emotionally tied I am to it, the more the letting go becomes a process rather than just a decision and it's done.
Right.
Well,
and I wish that it were all cut and dry. Yes or no, you got to let this go. Or when we ask those questions, what am I gaining or what am I losing? I wish that it was just clear to say, well, yeah, I'm gaining this and losing that. Then yes, but a lot of times it really is a pro and con list of balancing it out because, you quit your job and yes, you were losing a lot of hot weather and cold weather and extreme weather, being outside all the time, a lot of long hours, a lot of exhaustion, you were losing all that, but you were also losing a paycheck, and so you have to weigh them and say, am I losing more than I'm gaining, and a lot of times that's not an easy thing to weigh, and you have to put the emotions in there. What's going to make me feel better? What's going to make me happier? What's going to serve me?
That's what I was going to say. When I actually made the decision to let go, what weighed it out for me was, how do I feel about letting go? Am I going to feel better once I let go?
Or am I going to regret it?
Or am I going to regret it? Right. Now, in the very early stages of it, I'm just going to be honest, I was afraid of the lack. if I let go of this paycheck, then what? Okay, well, that's when my trust in believing God is my source, not this paycheck. God is my source. That's when that really kicked into high gear, and I had to say,
still does a lot.
you know, okay, God, I'm trusting you here. I have weighed this out. I have done this as smart as I know how to do it. You know, it wasn't like I just walked in and quit. I mean, I had another plan already working, another
Right.
working plan
Right.
already. But it still took a lot of faith to say, I'm going to walk away from this regular paycheck,
Right.
what I'm used to seeing, and I'm going to rely. God is my source. Now, here we are, well, in November, a year and a half later, and not only are we still afloat, we're doing fine. I feel better. Emotionally, I'm better. Psychologically, I'm better. It was the right choice for me, and it was at the right time.
What would you have done if it hadn't been, though? What would you have done if you quit and thought, oh my gosh, what did I do?
I did think that. There were quite a few days when I did think that.
Right.
Oh my God, what did I just do? What did I just do? Especially when I had several other people that you know of that were questioning, have you lost your mind? Now what are you going to do? How are you going to provide for your children? I had a lot of naysayers, you know, and I had to keep relying. This was the right choice for me. God is my source.
Right.
And some days there were just affirmations to get me through. And it was
Right,
okay.
and I think
now,
that's a good point.
What would I have done? I don't know, because I did what I needed to do.
Yeah, I think that brings up a good point, is that a lot of it is totally depending on our guidance and checking in with our guidance. And the bottom line, no matter what the pros and cons weigh out to be, our guidance has the final say.
Yes.
And
If my guidance had led me to something different, I would have done something different.
Right.
But it didn't.
Right.
So I can't go back and tell you what I would have done.
Exactly.
Because I literally relied on the guidance the entire time.
Right. I know
That
when
I
I
was
quit
getting.
my job the first time, the first big paying job, you know, that I had, when I worked for GE, and I wanted to stay home with my kids, and the pros and cons were, I mean, that was a lot of money to give up back then. Still is, but it was a lot for me back then, especially with new kids coming in the picture, you know, and but I had this knowing that it was the right thing to do, and that it was my thing to do. It's what I was supposed to do. And no matter how many times I could look at the pencil and paper items and say it makes no sense to let this job go, that knowing overrode it. You know?
Yeah.
So now I'm going to turn around on you a little bit.
Okay.
All right. So I know most of the time we let things go, we feel better. Well, what about when other people let you go? See what I'm getting at?
Yeah. When I'm the one that's let go.
When you're the one that's let
Yeah.
go. How does that make you feel?
At first the ego takes a hit. It really does. But then I have to look at the why. There's a season to everything, and that includes, you know, for me and other people's lives. I'm a season for them as well, you know. So I look at, is there something that I need to take away from this, and try and start there,
Right.
especially when the ego's hit,
Right.
because I have been let go in several
Oh, we all have
other
that.
lives,
We
you
all
know.
have.
And
At some point,
it
we
hurt.
all have.
It did. It really hurt. But then it helped me to realize that when there were reasons why I was. And most of them was, we just aren't in the same place anymore.
Right. Usually grow apart.
Yeah.
And whether that's a close relationship, such as a marriage, or a friendship, or just an acquaintance. I think for me, of course, it hurts at first, or it's a hit to the ego. But the older I get, the easier it is for me to just not take it as personal.
Yeah.
And to say, okay, that was just time for that to go away. But I always try to question, you know, was it because I should have done something I didn't, or shouldn't have done something I did? Is there something I can learn from this?
Yeah.
You know, did I quit growing and they're still growing, or am I growing in the wrong direction, or, you know, just evaluate what's going on.
Yeah.
And then once I've made that decision that, ooh, I made a mistake, then I try to rectify that
Yes.
if there is one.
Yeah.
And if I feel like, no, I didn't make a mistake, this is exactly where I want to be headed, this is exactly what I need to be doing. And if that offended them or made them mad or upset them, or if it was just time for them to go in a different direction, then I'm just going to bless them and let them go.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's not worth fighting for at that point if I don't want to go in their direction.
Yeah.
You know, if we are truly heading in opposite directions, then it's time to bless
Then
it.
it's
and
time
let
to
it go.
bless it and let it go. Right.
It's not going to serve me to try to please others and change my mind based on where they're headed, you know, no matter who it is.
Exactly.
If we all have a purpose for our lives.
We want to be, when it comes time for us to make decisions in our lives, we want someone to be graceful and allowing us to do what it is we need to do.
Right.
Well, in the same
You need to do
turn,
the same.
I need to offer that same graciousness to someone who is trying to let me go.
Right.
And so I try and look at the situation to see if there's something I need to see there, and do that recollection. Try and learn from it. If there is something I need to make amends for, apologize for, or make right, then I try and do that if the other person is receptive to it. And then I simply bless them.
Yeah. And let them go.
I let them go.
Okay, so we've talked about relationships mostly.
Yeah.
So what about letting other things go? What about worry and fear and those kind of things?
That is becoming easier as I practice it.
How? What are you doing to make it easier? How are you
Well, I have
treating
to
it
practice it
differently?
in the moment when it comes up. The first thing that I do that comes to mind now through our studies is God is my source,
Right.
and that is my go-to.
Right.
That's my absolute.
And that's
go-to.
not just financial
No.
either. That's
No,
with everything.
that's with
God is our
everything.
source
God
of
is my source.
Everything.
God is my source. And then the second question I ask myself is, one of, depending on what this situation is, what do I need to learn? What is it I need to see? Or
What do I need to change?
what do I need to change about me?
Right.
Not about something else,
Right.
but about me.
Right. And it's not just money worries. It's worries about our kids, worries about the future, worries about what we're going to do next. You know, everything. It all goes back to trusting God more.
It does. It does.
Trusting Him to handle the situation.
And it's a
that
practice.
we are in exactly where we need to be, as long as we are following our guidance.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's an indicator of I shouldn't be worrying at all. None of us should ever worry. But if we are, then it's an indicator that either I'm off track, or I need to change something, or I'm not trusting God enough. You know.
So the first thing for me is to identify what is the worry.
Right. And what's the problem?
What is the problem? What is the worry? Why am I worried? The second thing is for me to remind myself who I am.
Right. Oh yeah, good one. Good one. I know that every time you and I get off track, it helps to have a friend to say, "Hey, I think you're going down the drain
Remember
here."
who you are.
And then to say, I think that gets us back on track every time when we remind each other who you are. Remember who you are is the one statement that always gets to me, and I think it gets to you because it's when I see you start heading in the other direction. It's when I feel myself start heading in the other direction. It's to remember that we are women of power. And we have the God of the universe living inside of us that is right there ready to give us guidance at any point in time. No matter how low we feel, or how we've been hurt, or how angry we are, we have inside of us everything we need. Everything. And there
Sometimes
is
we just
no
need to be
one out
reminded.
here that can hurt us to the point where we can't move forward, you know? We have that inside, and I think to remember that helps me to let things go too. And to get over the things that have let me go. Good stuff.
That is good stuff.
Yeah. Shreen.
Shreen.